97.3 ESPN presents The Sports Bash with Mike Gill. It's time for Football at 4 with Geoff Mosher, powered by InsideTheBirds.com.
We expect to win every time we step on the field. That's just the mindset that we have.
Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig holding the fort down for Mike Gill for the rest of the show. Hunter Brody is still here, though. Football at 4, 97.3 ESPN, brought to you by PlaySugarHouse.com. Geoff Mosher joins us for a Mosher Monday each every Monday. And, bros, we got a lot to talk about with Mosher today because it feels like the Eagles are one day on the grass and the whole world is falling down around them. Geoff Mosher joins us like all guests on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Jeff, happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. How's everybody doing?
I think we're doing well overall. I mean, we're obviously a little bit better than the Eagles are feeling right now because it seems like all of a sudden you guys dropped this great Inside the Birds pod this morning. I'm getting all this great information on my drive in to work today. And then I get to work and then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, we got upper and lower body injuries. Like, first of all, when did football become hockey with the injury update?
Yeah, isn't that a beautiful out that the Eagles are now taking with limited media there, and these injuries already occurring before the media was there? They don't have to be specific, but obviously some of the names that were involved are going to raise some eyebrows, specifically on the defensive line, which, year after year seems to be hit hard with injuries. You have Javon Hargrave, the newcomer, who's diagnosed with an upper body injury, and Derek Barnett, I believe it was diagnosed as a lower body injury. I will have more on that as we gather some info. I can tell you this about the Javon Hargrave injury. I've been told that the Eagles feel, in a sense, that they've dodged a bullet, that they thought the injury could have been worse, but they are at least satisfied that it's only going to be a few weeks. And remember, they're being very precautious here with players like him. They're not going to rush him back on the field because they need him healthy for the season. So as bad as it sounds by being called an injury that's week to week, they felt that it could have been worse. So that is the silver lining.
Yeah, for the circumstances, that's definitely a positive to hear. But Gil and I were trying to figure out, did this happen in practice today? Because it seemed like the reports came out before practice even started.
Right. It did not happen in practice today. I know that. It happened sometime in the last, few days. It was not anything that transpired on the field today. He was already hurt.
But they're not actually practicing, correct? So this wasn't anything that happened on the field.
Oh, well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, on Friday, phase 2 started last week, right? And so part of phase 2, and phase 3 started today. They're in pads today. So at the end of phase 2, there was a Sunday and a Friday workout. Saturday was the day off. And Friday and Sunday were 11-on-11s and 7-on-7s. They were in shorts and shells. They were not in pads.
Right.
But they were still able to do OTA style or early training camp style of preparation on the field and practice on the field.
Okay. Yep. We were just trying to figure out exactly, how did this happen if they're now being in pads and all of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, there's and just like we reported on Inside the Birds, I had it, I think on our last one, the one before that dropped this morning, Andre Dillard, you may have read about being in and out of the lineup today, which he was. He was in and out of left tackle first string today because he was nursing a little bit of a knee tweak that he was having dealt with. Nothing major, but again, that happened again before today as well.
To stay on the defensive side, I know that with Barnett not playing, Vinny Curry, and some other guys who were getting those extra reps, do you think the way that they kind of alternated who was going to be in and not be in with the injuries tells us a lot about what they would do in the regular season if the same guys were out?
Yes and no. I mean, on the offensive line, you had Jason Peters out today for a lot of it, and then taking his place was Matt Pryor. I think that's normal, and that's what you would expect. And left tackle, when Dillard wasn't playing, they put Jordan Mailata at left tackle. Now, would that happen in the middle of the season if Andre Dillard were to get hurt, or would they move Jason Peters back to left tackle and put Matt Pryor at right guard? I just don't know the answers to that. I know they like consistency, and so if Jason Peters has been playing right guard for 5 straight weeks during the season, and then Dillard gets hurt, maybe they do put Matt Pryor at left tackle. On defensive side, I think probably more accurate, right? Because without Javon Hargrave, they went to Malik Jackson, who is a starter before he got here anyway. So I think, Malik Jackson and Fletcher Cox is normal. And I look, the Vinny Curry signing now to me makes a whole lot of sense because as we talked about last week, although they have so many names of potential candidates at defensive end to make the team, they don't have someone who you would really regard as a first down, rundown starter type of defensive end. And so without Derek Barnett in the lineup right now, Vinny slides in there. If Vinny was not on the team, I mean, who are you talking about now? Sharif Miller or Josh Sweat? Neither of those guys, I believe the team thinks right now is ready to be a starter. They're more situational pass rushers. Same thing with Jannard Avery or Joe Osman or Casey Tuhill or anybody that they've got playing that defensive end position. The only one that has a proven track record of being able to hold up and play all 4 downs if necessary is Vinny Curry.
Geoff, you mentioned Jason Peters. Doug Peterson did address at his presser about them managing Peters' workload, and he said, look, you can't give everybody 100% of the reps. They can't do that, but he does believe that all things considered, they can give him enough reps to be comfortable, he uses the word, for the first week game against Washington.
Yeah, and I think they're going to be smart about how they get him his reps and also how they get him his rest. So, for example, they had, like I mentioned, 2 practices that involved 7-on-7s and 11-on-11s, one on Friday, one on Sunday. I believe Jason Peters was a part of one of them. I don't know if he was part of both. I know Adam said in the podcast this morning that he was not. He was not a full in one of those practices. So today is a day that they just start phase 3. They're just in pads, so it's not surprising to me that today they back off Jason a little bit, and it wouldn't shock me if he was back in tomorrow for a stretch of days. They're going to find the time to get off days because you have to remember without preseason games, there are not as many off days built into the schedule. It used to be that you got a day off before a preseason game and a day off after a preseason game. So that's 8 right there. And, to be honest, Jason Peters hasn't always played in every single preseason game. So there were plenty of training camps last few years where Jason was getting 3 days off a week for 4 straight weeks. That's not going to be the case anymore. So they have to make sure that they balance his reps with his rest.
You mentioned phase 2. Did anyone perform very well out there to maybe raise some eyebrows?
Yeah, Doug mentioned a couple of guys today, and one guy that I heard 2 different sources tell me about that they were pleasantly happy with, and I won't say surprised because they expected a little bit of a jump, but linebacker TJ Edwards, who was already a success story by making the team last year as a rookie free agent, and then by the end of the year he's starting. He comes from Wisconsin. He's a true downhill Big Ten style linebacker, plays the run well. He did a nice job, Hunter, last year of shedding some weight to at least be a little bit more fluid on an NFL field and run a little bit more, but he was still mostly used against the run only. And I'm told that he's running even better now than he did at the end of last year, and he's in the mix to be a nickel linebacker. Of course, right now it's going to be Nate Gary and Duke Riley now that Jadavis Brown has hung it up. Those are your more athletic run-around type of linebackers, but whereas maybe a week or 2 ago I thought that would be your nickel and you would only see TJ Edwards on first down or second and run. Now Edwards is giving himself an opportunity to compete for spots in that nickel package.
Geoff Mosher joining us, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, drops every Monday and Thursday morning. Of course, you can follow Geoff on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL for all your Eagles and NFL coverage. Football at 4 here on 97.3 ESPN. Geoff, just going to elaborate more on the linebackers. So, from what we understand right now, we've talked about linebacker a few times because especially with Jatavius Brown's sudden retirement, I'm assuming based on what you and Adam have talked about is it's Nate Gary, it's TJ Edwards, it's Duke Riley, but what is it after those 3 guys?
Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people would like to hear that Davion Taylor, the 3rd-round pick from Colorado, who has all this, tremendous athleticism, is, next in line if somebody were to get hurt. But as we've been talking about for quite a while on Inside the Birds, he's just too raw. He has a project. He is a guy that they hope really fulfills the projection that they have for him 2 or 3 years down the road, and is just making plays all over the field, especially in this passing league. But right now, he is just not ready. He did not play a lot of stack linebacker at college, so just getting into the line of scrimmage and stopping the run is not exactly his forte. And so if you're really looking at the backups, you're looking at Alex Singleton, who was a guy who last year was on the team and played a lot of special teams. He was a really good player in the CFL. I think he was Defensive Player of the Year, if not twice, definitely once before the Eagles signed him. They had him last year, and he played on special teams. And now this year he's got an opportunity to get on the field if he can continue to improve. And after him, you're talking about a rookie, but not Davion Taylor. You're talking about Sean Bradley. He's one of those guys that I heard has impressed the coaches. They like his quickness. I'm sorry, they like his instincts, his feel for the game. I mean, he's played the linebacker position at Temple and has done it really well at a high level. So he's not the greatest athlete in the world, but he clings to the playbook a lot quicker. Concepts come easier to him. And probably if they had to play a guy on defense, and you hope that you're not reaching that far down too early in the season, I think a guy like him, like Sean Bradley or Alex Singleton, would get a nod before Davion Taylor would. And then we'll have to see how the kid that they signed, Dante Olson does. He's got a big bridge to gap, being a rookie free agent who just hasn't, gotten a lot of reps because of this season.
What about developments at wide receiver? Now, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is day-to-day. How much will that impact him? I know we're all kind of waiting to see what type of season he's going to have this year.
I bet that just made your day, Hunter, when you heard that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside was already hurt, right?
No. Why would I ever want it? I would never want anybody injured. Come on.
No, I don't mean that made your day. I just meant like it probably made your blood boil, because I know you were not happy with how his
Yes, blood boil, different
nobody
way.
Was happy.
Yeah, different way to word it. Blood boil. I don't want to see anyone get injured.
Of course, that's what I should have. I'm sorry. I apologize to anybody who thought I meant that you were rooting for him to get hurt. But no, yeah, that's. We'll have to see what that is. I don't know the severity. I can tell you that something that I had reported on the podcast Inside the Birds is that they had been lining him up, interestingly, in the slot a lot lately, which is not a position that you think that he would normally want to excel at. I mean, he is your natural X. He's a strong physical receiver who's supposed to be good at contested catches and fighting off that press coverage that you normally see across the X receiver. And so the fact that he's in the slot, and it kind of brings up images of a Jordan Matthews, a guy who was very successful as an atypical slot receiver, as a big, tall, physical slot receiver. And we'll just say, I don't know if this is something that they feel JJ will be good at, or if it's just that they're ready to get more dynamic and explosive, and they want Jalen Reagor in that X spot because Reagor has played already. He has lined up in practice at that X position.
Carson Wentz actually mentioned Jalen Reagor, said very complimentary of him. I know Doug Peterson talked about the chemistry between Greg Ward and Wentz as well. I know it's very early returns, but what are some of the things that you are gathering from what the Eagles are doing and what they're saying about how the wide receiver position will line up after Deshaun Jackson?
Yeah, I mean, clearly Deshaun is at your Z, and every once in a while he'll move around. You may even see him in the slot a little bit because they like to do that. But he's primarily your Z. And I think X right now is up for grabs with Jalen and with JJ, and we'll see what happens when Alshon comes back. Part of me thinks that they really do want to transition to being a more dynamic downfield team, so that if Jalen Reagor is really successful at the X to start, it's going to be hard to knock him out of that position unless he goes through some real rookie issues. And then slot is a good point. I mean, first of all, slot only happens when you're in 3 wide receiver formations. And as we know, the Eagles don't play as many 3 wide receiver formations which is their 11 personnel, because they're in 12 personnel so much, and that's their 2 tight end formation. And there's no reason to think that with Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert that they're going to play less 2 tight end formations. So I would say right now, when they are in their 11 personnel, you're looking at Greg Ward as the slot receiver. but certainly that can change. Let's say J.J. Arcega or Whiteside, gets healthy, plays really well, and Jalen Reagor is healthy and playing really well. Well, then they may decide that they want, one at X and one in the slot, or be able to interchange both of them. And that's fewer snaps for Greg Ward, who's, was obviously very dependable last year for them down the stretch, but doesn't really have the traits of the other wide receivers as far as speed and athleticism.
Keeping it with the offense, Miles Sanders, the hype is real for him. What should we be excited about when it comes to his role?
Well, I think we should be excited about what Doug Peterson said today. And Doug was asked if Miles can have more of a role in the passing game and not just kind of the running back who catches balls out of the flat, but can he line up in the slot and run routes like a receiver and catch the ball in those kind of formations and empty packages? And Doug said, yeah, that's somebody that we already articulated is our guy going into the year, and we want to increase what he can do. And Doug said if that meant using him out of the backfield like that, then they want to see where he can grow in that regard. And Doug mentioned he thinks he's got the skill set to do it. And I think we saw it last year, surprisingly, because he did not catch the ball a whole lot at Penn State. That was not something that you see a whole lot in the Penn State offense. Occasional dump off here and there. But if you remember, pretty early in the season, the Lions game, the Vikings game, he was lined up and those HB go routes, catching balls 30, 40 yards downfield with the ball in the air. And so what they saw last year, I think, gave them the confidence to say, we can do more with this guy in the passing game. And, hey, maybe he gets to that point where he's like Brian Westbrook, where he is just a matchup nightmare no matter where you put him, in the backfield, in the slot, wherever you put the ball in his hands, he's going to be a matchup nightmare. And really to capitalize that, but I want to add this now before I forget, something that we talked about on the podcast. I have heard some really good things about the impact Rich Scangarello is having, the coach that they brought in, is having on the offense. Remember, he was the offensive coordinator for the Broncos last year, but before that, he was coming up through the Kyle Shanahan system. And I know Mike Gill always raves about the 49ers offense and how it looks like they have so much speed, when it's really that they have so many guys who are open in space because of misdirection that they do and the way they use their offensive line and pulling and trapping. And that's something I think we're going to see with the Eagles offense more of, and that should help guys like Miles Sanders and Zach Ertz to be able to get the ball and Jalen Reagor in space.
Do you think that the way that they're utilizing Miles Sanders right now and adding them in the slot and things of that nature will impact the way that they use Boston Scott at all? Maybe it opens up their mind to say, maybe we can do some exciting things with him as well.
It might, Hunter, but I think some people view Boston Scott as like a Miles Sanders clone. And I know some people have said he's kind of like Darren Sproles, so in how he catches the ball. I feel like he is in his elusiveness, but he doesn't have the same kind of jet motor that Miles Sanders had, that ability to just explode off the catch. But he is herky-jerky, and he obviously was a weapon for them last year. I think he can be someone that they use more in gadgetry, jet motion, jet sweeps, things like that. I do believe that they want to get him involved as an offensive weapon a little more. I just don't know if you're going to see him used the same way Miles is. I don't know if he's going to line up in the slot and run, routes across the middle of the field and catch the ball over his shoulder and things like that. I think he's better when you get the ball in his hand quickly in space on the screens, dump offs, and the little gadgets.
Geoff, as I think about some of the things that you and Adam have talked about on the Inside the Birds podcast, which drops every Monday and Thursday in the morning, one thing you guys have brought up is about the role of Rick Scangarello in how the offense is evolving. And as we're talking about Miles Sanders, I'm thinking about the fact that Scangarello comes from that Shanahan background. And what is one of the traits of the Shanahan background is get as many offensive weapons on the field as possible. Something that Andy Reid has done as well in the past. And now you draft Jalen Hurts. You draft Jalen Reagor. You have all these plans for the different roles they can have. And with Miles Sanders, how much of an impact will all these guys getting up to speed have on what they put these guys out on the field? Because we know that Scangarello was bringing in these new concepts.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that I feel like I'm hearing consistently is that the offense has looked good so far because of those concepts. Now, again, I don't want everybody Eagles Super Bowl. We're talking about training camp. We're talking about a more like an OTA style training camp so far. So I'm not trying to sit here and tell you the Eagles are going to score 40 points a game or just become San Francisco's offense overnight. But it's when people are noticing that there's a difference in how the Eagles execute some of their plays because of the concepts that they're throwing in, that to me says something. It's noticeable. And Rich Scangarello's name came up in that kind of conversation. So I think while Doug tried harder to downplay the quote-unquote changes in the offense, I think it'll be pretty noticeable to Eagles fans as soon as you get to see them on TV, which will be week 1, obviously, against Washington. But yeah, and I think, again, the guys who function in space, just like when you watch the San Francisco offense and you saw how Deebo Samuel was used as a receiver but also a ball carrier. I mean, you can kind of imagine that kind of role for Jalen Reagor this year. And obviously you see how good George Kittle is, but he also gets the ball in space a lot. And so you can imagine Zach Ertz having a little bit more of an opportunity to catch the ball with not everybody around him like he is all the time. And then you'll see how that is all set up by their blocking schemes and their misdirections and motions that throw the defense off.
We would be remiss, Jeff, we didn't mention the quarterback, Carson Wentz, who also spoke to the media. One thing that stood out to me is he confirmed to the media that he's weighing in right now at 250 pounds. And in contrast, when he was drafted at the NFL Combine, he weighed in about 237. So what do you think the addition of that weight on the Wentz's frame means for the quarterback in 2020?
I mean, I don't want to put too much into it because, last year I remember he reported, and we made a big deal about how he reported a little bit thinner and leaner and more, maybe agile to get away from the pass rush and everything like that. And that was seen as a good thing. And it was because he played 16 games last year. I think people focus so much on the concussion that he sustained through no fault of his own against Seattle and kind of use that as, he never stays healthy. He played 16 games last year. He did stay healthy with that body frame. And he played, fairly well. He obviously had a little midseason slump there, but then snapped out of it at the right time. So I'm not sure if being 250 now is going to – I don't know that it's any better. I don't know that it's any worse, to be honest with you. It's certainly not something that's going to prevent a concussion if he gets hit the same way that Jadeveon Clowney hit him. So, I mean, the coaches and the players seem to think it's cool. They said he looks strong. He's being a leader out there. He looks physically fit. They joked about it being his new dad bod. And if that's the case, I've got 2 kids. I don't know why I don't look 250 pound and chiseled. But I never make a big deal about it. I think Carson plays – he's athletic. He's agile. His athleticism doesn't seem to leave him, whether he's the taller or the thinner, leaner version or the 250-pound version.
He's Geoff Mosher, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's live right now. You can go check it out. Drops every Monday and Thursday morning. Geoff Mosher, Adam Kaplan. Follow Jeff on Twitter at Geoff Mosher NFL for all your Eagles coverage. And as all guests, he appeared today on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Jeff, great stuff. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.